With Super Tuesday in the rearview mirror, Joe Biden has bounced back, and the path doesn't look any easier for his top competitor, Senator Bernie Sanders. 6 more states will hold races next Tuesday. Sanders lost 3 of those 6 states to Hillary Clinton in 2016. Now it's increasingly looking like a 2-man race as moderate candidates continue to drop out and back Biden. Well, here to wrap up Super Tuesday is Ian Sams, who joins me from Washington. He's a former press secretary for Senator Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. Ian, thanks so much for joining us. I want to discuss the tweet that you actually posted earlier today about Senator Warren, and you say that she's amassing leverage to get what she wants. The question is, what do you think it is that she wants?
It's a good question. I think it's kind of one of the biggest open questions that we have remaining in this primary. Senator Warren, if she stays in, could probably see a little bit more success than she's seen so far in the primaries because of the 15% threshold that candidates are required to hit in order to get any delegates. And you could see a scenario now that the field has winnowed so significantly that a 3-person race where Warren, Sanders, and Biden are the only 3 left could actually benefit her, and she could hit 15% in more and more states, which allows her to accumulate more and more delegates, which even if it's unlikely that that would get her to a delegate lead between now and the convention, it could give her more and more leverage in order to go to either Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders and say, I want the platform to say this. I want, potentially these roles in your administration if you were to win. Maybe I want to be your running mate. And so there are different questions that I think that she wants, is probably synthesizing right now in her head in Boston as she thinks about the path forward in this race. That are not just electoral. I think with Michael Bloomberg, he was in it to win it, and he saw pretty quickly after spending $500 million that if he wasn't going to win any states, he had no real path to nomination. But he likes Joe Biden and immediately was able to sign up with him. I think Elizabeth Warren's probably going to play this a little bit more strategically to see what extraction she could get out of whoever the presumptive nominee becomes.
So can you sort of give us a little sense? Senator Kamala Harris chose not to endorse any candidate ahead of the California primary. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I'll leave it to her to kind of explain her thinking and who she may or may, who she eventually may endorse. I think, there were a lot of local primary contests across California that she was very, very active in campaigning for down ballot Democrats. Governor Newsom also, declined to endorse before the primary, and they're 2 of the most popular statewide figures in California. And so I think, they were probably busy and probably wanted to wait and see how things shaked out for some Democrats in the state before jumping in all in for one candidate or another.
So can you give us sort of a little sense, Ian, of some context on just how big of a turnaround this was for Joe Biden? Were you surprised?
Oh, absolutely. I think a week and a half ago, before Congressman Clyburn endorsed Vice President Biden ahead of the South Carolina primary, Bernie's march to the nomination was strong. I mean, we were looking at a scenario where he was leading in California polls by 20, 25 points, and some of the other candidates weren't even hitting that delegate threshold of 15%. And it really looked like he was going to have a strong contest. And then, honestly, the last 72 hours before Super Tuesday, just everything that Joe Biden needed to happen in his favor happened. He won the South Carolina primary huge on the back of an overwhelming support among African Americans and suburban voters. He forced Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar out of the race, and not just that, he earned their endorsements and Beto O'Rourke's endorsement. And I think that in this contest where the South Carolina primary is so soon before the Super Tuesday contests, it really made earned media, which in this business is what we call press coverage, all the more important, and that there was no amount of money and no amount of advertising that could outweigh the narrative that Joe Biden was now the front runner and that he was the kind of more moderate or establishment choice against Bernie Sanders. And I think that in this contest, voters have constantly been trying to think about who the most electable nominee against President Trump is, and they've been looking for consolidation and looking for some sort of answer, and then in those 72 hours with Biden dominating the news, they sort of got the answer they were looking for.
The fact you talk a little bit about paid media and earned media, the fact that he was able to really get some victories in states that he didn't have an infrastructure or that he didn't really put any money into, what does that say about the voters of today at this point?
Yeah, I think it probably says a little bit more about our presidential politics than it does about voter behavior. I think that presidential contests now are nationalized contests where narrative and earned media, like you just said, and press coverage sort of dictates so much. I think President Trump 4 years ago in that primary showed how dominating everyone's consciousness and attention can lead to outsized electoral benefits. And I think, there's no question that in an Iowa caucus, for example, or a Nevada caucus, or a New Hampshire primary in a small state like that, your organization matters. It can be the difference in a close contest. But in a national election, which is what Super Tuesday was, voters are looking at their smartphones, or they're watching the news, or they're getting on social media to try to make up their mind at the last second. And when Vice President Biden, who had, as I said, sort of a stunning collection of big victories over the course of 3 days, was dominating everything, it's easier for voters to just go to the polls and cast their ballot for him without the need for attending a rally or having an organization that calls you and turns you out. I don't think anybody was confused or didn't know that there was a primary going on yesterday. And I think Biden is probably uniquely suited to capitalize on that environment because of his stature as a two-term vice president for Obama and someone who's pretty universally known in the party.
And Ian, at what point do you think President Obama weighs in and backs one of the candidates?
I don't think he will until we have a nominee. I mean, his team has been pretty clear about that. I think that he wants to serve as someone who can bring the party together after what could be a divisive primary if this goes on for a while. Someone who has, universal popularity within the Democratic Party. And so I think he doesn't want to be seen as putting his thumb on the scale one way or the other and would rather wait till it all comes together and try to bring everyone together. If it's, for his vice president, Joe Biden, if he's the nominee, but also I think, and probably more importantly, if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, President Obama is someone who could tell everyone who supported Vice President Biden and sort of whatever the Democratic establishment is, he could try to help bring them on board with Senator Sanders' candidacy if Bernie prevails.
Ian Sams, Ian, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.